two big comeback wins in a row for the Lions. So this week, though, they're down 27-3, and I'm putting some calls in this week to sports psychologists because I want to talk about the nature of blowing leads. And I was struck by this while watching the Lions-Cowboys games. Because, you know, like Jesus is a Raider fan, and I was a Redskin fan, and Rick's a Bears fan, and when one of our teams blows a big lead and you lose that game, it sticks with you, right? Like you're sitting there all year, or certainly in the days that follow that game, and you remember blowing. You're up 24-6 in the second half. You lose that game 30-27. That loss sits with you, right? But I don't know that it should sit with you. If there's any logical reason for this. If Cenk were sitting next to me, we'd talk about the fact that the coaches go easy and they stop. They don't have the dagger. They don't have the killer instinct. But I tend not to believe that. I think that it's probably fairly random. The fact is the game is 60 minutes long, and if you build up a 24-6 lead in the first 38 minutes of that game, hey man, there's still 22 minutes to go, and it still counts just as much. At some point, the other team may well figure it out against you the way you figured it out against them in the beginning. There are going to be some games that are lopsided. The one that starts 24-3 and it ends 24-3 the other way, you're tied at 27, you go to overtime. But there clearly is something. Because you see teams frequently with leads sort of get very conservative. They don't really go for the jugular. They stop throwing and they lose the lead. That definitely happens. And I want to talk about this to a sports psychologist about the nature of sort of stepping on another guy's throat when you have him down as a professional, because I think it's interesting. But I think we probably make too much out of blowing leads, of choking away leads. I think sometimes it's just going to happen. The game is 60 minutes or the game is 9 innings. And if you scored 4 runs in the 4th, the other team might score 4 runs in the 8th. It might just happen. But in the Cowboys sense, you cannot even really say that they were conservative, at least not initially, because when they were up 27-3 and had the ball, Tony Romo threw, I can't use the phrase pick six, I won't say it, threw interceptions.
Why not?
Because it's made up and it's new and it's stupid and overused. So he throws.
But it's an accurate term for what occurred.
Yeah, it is. So as he threw an interception, it was returned for a touchdown. That's also accurate.
And you could save your breath and energy by saying pick six.
You don't seem concerned about saving your breath and energy.
I am. He threw a pick six. He threw an interception that was returned 49 yards for a touchdown.
The first one was to, what's the guy's name? Bobby Carpenter, is that his name? It was his groomsman. That's a storyline that's being repeated. The guy'd been in his wedding because Carpenter used to play for the Cowboys, and he returned it for a touchdown and then fumbled it at the goal line. But I guess, let me see here, did they end up giving Carpenter the touchdown on that? It was fun. They did. He fumbled it like at the goal line. The Lions recovered it in the end zone anyway. So back-to-back possessions, he has balls taken the other way. So the Cowboys didn't give up. They were throwing, and it cost them. In a sense, maybe the Cowboys should have been more conservative with a 27-3 lead in the third quarter, and then boom, all of a sudden you got a 27-17 game, and then the Lions come back and ultimately win it. And then at the end of the game, Rick and I were having this conversation, which is interesting, and I'm torn on it. But so Calvin Johnson was essentially shut down in the game, but then he had, I think, 6 catches for 58 yards or 5 catches for 58 yards in the fourth quarter, and those 2 scores on balls from Stafford. One about a 30-yard pass that Stafford just threw in the air that apparently before the play, Johnson, which is one of those cool things you really want to see, looks at Stafford and just does that.
Yeah, gives him the little finger point. Yeah. Just throw it up, man. I'll get it.
Throw it up. And then he did throw it up. There were 3 guys there. And he threw it up and he catches it. That brought the Lions to within 1 score. Then for the winning touchdown from the 2-yard line, they throw to him again. It's not a fade. He just steps back, he throws it up, and he gets it. And he had single coverage. Terrence Newman was guarding him. And I guess, were Aikman and Buck doing that game? I think they were.
Probably, if it's the Cowboys.
Right, it was the Cowboys and the Lions. Obviously, it's the Lions. It's a feature game. But Cowboys and Lions, that game, of course, that's a Thanksgiving game. So Stafford hits Johnson, and the analysis was, whoever was doing the game, was that play, that you can't double cover somebody that close to the goal line. And that was Aikman, I think, who was saying that, if it was whoever the color commentator was. And I guess maybe that's just sort of a consensus that you can't double. And then Rick said you should have. But then you think about it. Do you ever remember seeing a guy that close to the goal line, a wide out, double teamed? I don't think you do.
Look, I mean, my opinion on it, if a guy is, how tall is he? 6'6", 6'5"? He's 6'5", 236.
I think he's 7 feet tall.
Okay, he's 7'12", and regardless, I understand that corners and safeties are not the biggest guys in the world, but in that situation, with arguably the best receiver in the league, I would not give him one-on-one coverage with a 5'11" corner.
I think when you spread the field like that, which is going to lead me to another point, which, again, I say this as a guy who's never coached any football in his life, but a couple of trends we're seeing in the NFL. Blown leads, and then what to do on the goal line, and this gets into that, because I don't think I've ever seen a guy. I'm curious, and I'd be interested to hear from people what would happen if you double cover somebody at the goal line, because obviously then you can't cover somebody else. I mean, then you've created a significant goal line weakness, which is why they don't do it. It must have occurred to these guys to double cover Calvin Johnson.
But in that situation, I would rather have Nate Burleson beat me than Calvin Johnson.
Maybe I hear you. It's interesting, but it's not done. So what and doesn't mean that's right just because people haven't done it. And maybe with a guy as special as Calvin Johnson, maybe you do it. Although Rob Ryan, defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, there was some fun little mileage this week out of Rob Ryan saying, Calvin Johnson's essential. I'm paraphrasing. Calvin Johnson's a good player, but he'd be the third best receiver on our team after Miles Austin and Des Bryant. Des Bryant, who manages to vanish for large portions of football games.
Yep.
Although he's clearly a remarkably talented player. And then Jim Schwartz, after the win, he was feeling good, saying that I'm sure glad we had the third best receiver on their team. By the way, Jim Schwartz, you know where Jim Schwartz went to school?
I know he's friends with Kid Rock. That's the only interesting fact I know about him.
Jim Schwartz is my age. He's a year older than I am. He went to Georgetown. He was an economics major at Georgetown. He's an NFL coach. How did that happen? Hi, I'm Ben Mankiewicz along with Rookie Mankiewicz, and we're hosting TYT Sports, and we'd like you to subscribe, wouldn't we, Rookie? What are you looking at?